But you didn't see that coming, Yanik.
I did not see it coming.
So I call it my literally the only thing I use it for. Just yeah. Um,
Don't
all
make me
right.
get out the puppet this early.
It's nice. It's like a little cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Yanik, I'm really grateful to have you here on the podcast today. Thank you for taking the time to be here. And just a quick introduction. So Yanik Silver's, we met at a mastermind group that I'm part of with Jeff Walker. And it became pretty clear. I mean, you were a guest at the mastermind, and there was like some conversations I was having earlier, and people are bringing up Yanik, and it became clear that there's just like this mutual respect that everyone had for Yanik in the group as like a OG, in this digital marketing and business space. And when he presented at the mastermind, it became clear why. And I mean, just for a quick introduction, Yanik, you're the founder of Maverick 1000, which is a private network of visionary leaders, including Richard Branson, Tony Hawk, and Tim Ferriss. He's
Well,
an
they've been
author.
participating, people in there, not necessarily members.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So participating members include, or folks who've been involved with it are Richard Branson, Tony Hawk, Tim Ferriss.
Yeah.
He's the author of Evolved Enterprise and Cosmic Journal, which helps guide entrepreneurs to align their profit with purpose and intuition. And he's also a pioneer of conscious business. So he helps blend direct response marketing with intention and community, and doing it in a way that creates a wider impact. So when we connected, I mean, you also shared the art that you had been working on. And I just thought it was really cool how you had created this space for creative expression with art meets business. And so that was really kind of the context for the conversation today. I thought it would be great to connect and share a little bit about your journey and experience and advice for artists who are still getting in touch with who they are and sharing their art in a bigger
Yeah.
way.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, no, I was, really appreciated meeting you. I thought you were one of the real bright spots in the group. I mean, the entire group is amazing, and Jeff and I have known each other for I don't know how long, 20 some years. So it was really awesome to be able to be there in Durango. What I think I was thinking about this interview this morning, and what I wanted to be as a kid was I wanted to be a professional hockey player and then a cartoonist in the off season. That was my original goal as a kid, and I
Mhm.
did not make the NHL. And then when I kind of went into the business world, most of my art had already fallen away by that point. So many of us, I don't know, as when we're young, kind of have that talent, and then we kind of put it away for more practical, pragmatic reasons, or whatever the case is. There's a million reasons. And then recently, last couple of years, I've gone back to it. And it's been an amazing journey. And it's been really fun because it opens up a whole nother expression of who I am.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I hear that a lot from artists who we work with or in the community who their music is something that's been a lifelong passion, something that they've done, but now they're just kind of coming into sharing it with people and sharing it and more intentionally wanting to like create a career or a business. Um, so I mean, to start with, I would just love to hear a little bit more about your journey and like your story with, because I know that you've accomplished some pretty remarkable things, in business, and I would love to hear kind of how that journey went for you, and specifically with this part with like art as well, and like reconnecting with that, how that weaves into it.
Yeah, well, the art part. So my parents, I guess had seen some of my art talent, and they thought they were fostering it. So they put me into a fine arts program at one point when I was a young kid, and I hated it. Like it was drawing still lifes and all sorts of things, and I wanted to draw cartoons. So I dropped out of this fine arts program, and really, when I think about it, not with doodle here and there, but not much. And then start coming back. But the business side. So I grew up in a immigrant family, came over from Russia when I was 3 years old. My dad built a medical equipment sales and service company. And at 14, I was telemarketing. At 16, the only way I got a car was actually go cold call doctors. So I got a really
Mm.
early education into marketing and sales, and
Mm.
realized that cold calling kind of sucked. And it was a
Mm.
doctor client of mine who gave me this Jay Abraham tape, which talked about direct response marketing. It talked about, how do you write ads that actually get people to raise their hands and either give you money or be interested in what you're doing. And I'm like, this is fascinating to me. So I just would spend hours a night reading, learning about psychology, about copywriting, about anything to do with that aspect of could you write words on paper or an ad or whatever it was, and have an action. And I was just fascinated by that. And it helped grow my dad's business from a regional player to a national player. And he would look at these long ads. He's like, nobody's going to read all this. I'm like, okay, let's just try it. Let's see. And then, we'd get some big results. And then the internet came along, and this was like 2000. And then I started, I was just like, yeah, I feel like there's something here. And I created something called, I woke up at, so I believe your questions really create your answers, right? So one of the
Mm.
questions I had was, how do I create a fully automatic website that makes me money while I sleep and is an incredible value for people? And literally, I
Mm.
woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning with this idea for something called instant sales letters. And there are little fill in the blank sales letter templates. There's some of the templates that I created for my dad's business. There's some I've been doing some consulting work. And then that turned into my first, like in a couple months, it was a 6-figure business. And then my first $1 million product. And then people were like, hey, how did you do that? Could you teach me how to do what you're doing? And so I
Mm.
just kept following that path of, what do people want me to teach them, and what did that look like? So I started teaching people how to take their knowledge and information and share it online. And that did really, really well. And then about 18 years ago, I just asked a very simple question, which was, am I happy? Would I be happy doing what I'm doing 10 years from now? And when I was really honest in my journal, the answer was no. And then that led me into this whole exploration with Maverick, and this idea of like combination of growth, impact, and fun for different entrepreneurs. And it's been a really interesting journey from that spot.
Mm. Cool. Yeah, that's super inspiring to hear. I mean, especially some of those pivot points for you where you sort of realized maybe in some ways you were living a life of like success by certain metrics, but also it's not something that you were fulfilled or like satisfied by, and that process of reconnecting with that. Would love to hear a little bit more about that part of it. And for someone who's like listening to this right now, who maybe can relate or resonate with, I know a lot of our community members express how they're kind of working a job or something they don't really enjoy that kind of pays the bills, and they have this dream to like focus on their art or making music or doing something else. Would love to hear just a little bit more about that moment for you where it kind of flipped, and how you would guide someone who's maybe at a crossroads in their life right now and they're kind of wondering like, it's is what I'm doing right now the right thing to be focused on.
Yeah, and so I call these cosmic alarm clock moments. It's like there's these, the whisper is in our ear. It's like our intuitive voice, our higher self, our, whatever you want to call it. It's usually a whisper. Like it starts off as a very quiet voice. That whole notion of like, am I happy? Would I be happy doing what I'm doing 10 years from now? And it'd be
Mm.
really easy to just be like, yeah, this is fine. Because outside looking in, like you said, everything looked great. I was driving the hot sports car, making a lot of money, and helping a lot of people. Like I don't want to discount that. Like there's a lot of people I'd be in an event or a conference and I wasn't even speaking. Someone's like, dude, Yanik, you changed my life. I sell guitar lessons online now. And, I'm financially independent because of you. And that was really heartwarming. But when I was like, I don't feel like this is my highest expression of totally of who I am. And in some ways it's even harder. Like when you're in a job that you don't really like, it's sometimes easier, right? Like there's, you could, if you're at a spot where it's like, it's just a job, and then over here's my creative pursuit, then you're like, all right, this is my real joy. And everyone has their own kind of way that they can step into that fully. But when things are going really well, it's sometimes even harder to step into, all right, what does my soul really, really want? And that requires some real exploration. And so digging deep into who you are as a person, what makes you happy. And I think it really is pretty easy, and I'm sure Michael, you might agree, is like our fullest expression is what makes us happy as at that soul level. And typically that full expression is that creative expression. Like we are creators. That's the unique gift that we've been given and bestowed. And I'm just happy when I'm creating. And the more and more you can do that, the more like as a byproduct that happiness will come. And when you're not chasing it. So there's a couple books that I really love. One of them is called The Great Work of Your Life. It's by a yogi, this guy named Stephen Cope. And I kind of came into it in this synchronistic way. So much of my life is, I love synchronicities and magic because it kind of is, that's my love language. And my wife is definitely afraid of bugs and insects and all sorts of things. And I was playing men's league hockey. So I still play hockey, but not, I ended up playing college hockey and still men's league hockey. But so, men's league hockey is like 10 o'clock at night, super late. And she texts me, she's like, there's a bug in the hallway in the bedroom hallway. You need to go get it. and a book was over top of it, and it was the great work of your life. I'm like, oh, I remember ordering that. I never read it, and so got rid of the bug, and then and I read this book, and I've read it now like 8 or 9 times, and it's this beautiful book that really looks at one of the oldest spiritual texts, the Bhagavad Gita, and looks at it across different people's lives, like people that we would know, like Nelson Mandela or um, I don't know, Susan B. Anthony and Harriet Tubman, like, people from history that when they follow their true dharma or true calling, like things have just really exploded for them in a great way. And then also quote unquote regular people when they found their true calling. And I love that book. And one of the aspects in there is that you can't be attached to the fruit of your labor. So it's
Mm,
only your labor. So it's like when you put your full heart and soul into something, that's the true gift. That's your true work. And then you can't be attached to what the results are. And as an entrepreneur, as so many of us were attached to what happens, the numbers, the accolades, whatever. I mean, we can have all these other outside factors, but when it's just simply, what is my truest work, and that's the real gift that you're giving to the world and even yourself. That's where the magic really happens, and that's just one of the things I really love out of that book.
mm. Ah, so good. So it's called the great work of
Great,
your
great
life.
work of your life, yeah, by a guy named Stephen Cope. Um,
Mm,
so at these crossroad moments, it's like really easy. I think it's like our heart. I talk a lot about like connecting your head, your heart, your higher purpose, right? Like head is like the business sense, the heart is the impact you want to make in the world, and the higher purpose is like, why are you here? Like, why did you incarnate here and or volunteer here or whatever for this unique adventure and this really interesting moment in time too, and so the head is going to be loud. It's like pragmatic, it's logical, it's like we can't do this, we can't whatever. But the heart is really that's where the artist is connected to and the higher purpose too. But you really do have to connect all of it, and that's why
mm,
I really love what you're doing too, is helping artists, musicians, like connect that part of it. Like it has to be all of it.
mm. So good. I do appreciate you sharing that. I mean, I feel really fortunate to have conversations like this with folks like yourself to be able to talk about this type of work. And what I'm hearing you say is that the head, the heart, and higher purpose. There are times where you might be successful from like a business standpoint, or from like the head point of view, or from like the outward material kind of signs of success. But if you're not connected with your higher purpose or your heart, then there's a missing alignment there. There's tension or like dissonance. That's not quite. It wants to be resolved. Um, and I mean, as it relates to listening to that, the way you described it, sort of this quieter voice that is sort of like the universe speaking through you. I'm curious if you have any advice for like, especially if someone's sort of struggling through one of those moments in their life where like the head is very loud, or they're kind of caught up in the day to day of their life, and you don't necessarily have a practice right now where when they try to get in touch with that quieter voice inside of them. What would your advice be for them to maybe start building, some touch points with that?
Yeah. So for me, a lot of it is journaling. Journaling is one of my favorite practices. It's like a foundational practice
Mm,
where a lot of people have tried journaling or stopped, or maybe they still keep one. It all depends, but and there's no right or wrong way of journaling, but it's a really beautiful process of getting everything that's in our head and put it on paper, and it creates a beginning, middle, and end on that page. And
mm,
so it's a great way of processing what we're going through. And I do a lot of other things in my journal that I think are kind of unique. One is using my non-dominant hand, and I've been, you get so much insight from using your non-dominant hand. So I'm right-handed, and I will, ask my 111-year-old self, and I'll use my left hand to answer as my 111-year-old self. It's better if you can get some quiet moments of reflection or meditation, and just connect to that feeling of that 111-year-old self that's kind of seen everything, been there, done that, seen your failures, your successes, all of that, and is coming from this really wise overview and asking. And one of the times when I was like kind of, it felt like things were kind of sideways with Maverick. It was the first time ever I had built like 7 or 8 different 7-figure product services, and Maverick was the thing that I was like, oh, this is, I'm putting my full passion into this. And it was the first time ever that things were kind of going sideways. I'm like, what is happening here? And so I asked my 111-year-old self, and the answer was light 1,000 suns, each have the potential to light another 1,000 suns. And I'm like, whoa, that's so that became my North Star that I've held for like the last 13 years. And so that way of connecting is really powerful. Also, using, so I created this, which is the Cosmic Journal. This is one of the original versions of it, and it works like an oracle. It works like a guide. So if you have something in your life that you can kind of connect to and be like, all right, well, what do I need to know? And then really be still and ask. And when you ask, you'll get these messages come to you from the universe in different ways. And sometimes we can overthink them and be like, oh, well, that bird means this, but really not. But you'll feel the difference. And also part of this is calibrating. So I don't know, should we pick a page, Michael? Maybe that'll be our,
Yeah,
all
let's
right.
do it.
All right. You can either pick a number, or we can just flip to a random page. You tell me when to stop.
77.
Your words create worlds.
Mm,
So you can learn so much about someone simply by paying attention to their words and language. What we say or think determines what we believe is possible or impossible.
mm,
Phrases like "I can't" or "I'll try" indicate they've given up before even starting. Stop
mm.
yourself and slow down to really examine what you're telling yourself. Your words invoke what's real. Take
Wow.
apart your next excuse and really observe what you're saying. Is it even true? Why are you repeating it? Where did it come from? What are the empowering words you could use instead? Words are alive with real power. Ensure you're using magic words to open up more worlds.
Mm, wow.
So that feels pretty potent right now. Is if you're exploring, it's like so many things. It's like what do we tell ourselves, and it becomes true no matter what we're telling ourselves.
Mm,
And it's like, well, I can't do this because of whatever, or I can't pursue my art
mm,
because of this. And I don't, I'm not. I fall to this too, where it's like, yeah, I feel like I want to do even more of my art, and then so it's like, okay, well, why not? And then there's any number of excuses that pop up, and so a lot of times we think, all right, well, if that person has done really well, then they don't have any excuse in this way, or it's like whatever situation you're in, there's going to be something there for you, and
mm,
just really examining what those words are and what you're telling yourself.
mm. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, there's a few synchronicities that come up just from that page right now. I mean, the first quote that came to mind was just the difference between asking yourself. You mentioned earlier just the power of questions and like which questions you ask yourself. That and those questions are comprised of words, and like which questions you ask. And asking the question "Can I?" versus "How can I?" is such a fundamental, just one word difference, but like really shifts what opens up from
Yeah.
that. Um,
The other thing when you're asking those questions, I love like journaling. I'll put that question, whatever the question is, that empowering question at the top of the page, and
mm,
then allow your normal hand, your right hand, to answer and keep answering, keep answering. The first question or two is going to be the same thoughts you've pretty much had over and over, and then you're going to get deeper and deeper and deeper, and then use your left hand as well and see what happens, and then you'll be like, oh, okay, this like there's going to be something that pops up by
mm.
going beyond just a typical two or three answers you're constantly giving yourself.
It's really interesting. Yeah, this is the first I've heard about this idea of like flipping and journaling with your other hand, but it makes sense. The what it reminds me of is brain study that I've heard of, where they basically covered someone's eyes, and when they had a split hemisphere, they realized that the the different sides of the brain would think independently, and then they would justify like why they did something with a logical reason, but really it was because of what they were seeing. And the takeaway was that those different hemispheres really like have it comes together to create an illusion of like of one solid self, but like there's a lot of things that are happening
Mm.
underneath the hood that actually separately create this magic together. So I can see why using your different hand would actually activate a different part of your brain as you're doing an exercise like that.
Yeah, it definitely does. And it brings the two halves together as well. And you're like tapping into wisdom that you're not getting. I mean, I've used it before, to talk to the universe, or even to my mom who's passed away now almost 20 years. It's like you can really connect to really any parts. It's pretty powerful. And just don't like get just allow yourself to just write, and you're gonna be like, oh, how do I make an E again? Or how do I make an A? And
Mm,
it's but just allow yourself, to just see what comes through. And I guarantee there's gonna be something powerful that comes out. And I've done this exercise with some really, really high powered, interesting entrepreneurs. And, one of my friends who's seen me do it many times, he's like, oh, and I'm like, just do it, John. And he's like, okay. And he's like, oh, he's like, it worked. It worked again. I got the answer I needed. I'm like, I know it works. It's just one of those things.
Mm, cool. I mean, it reminds me of what you mentioned earlier around having a conversation with your 111-year-old
11-year-old.
self,
Yeah.
and just like getting that perspective, or just kind of like separating from our normal identities, or kind of how we think of ourselves, and connecting with like a deeper wisdom seems like a really helpful
Oh, it's so
exercise.
yeah. I mean, I just did it the other day in the sauna. So I was, asking for some insight about something happening, and I got just a great note that I don't think my quote unquote normal self would have given me.
Mm,
So,
cool.
these to me, I think of all these as like example or not examples, but experiments, right? Like just see what happens and just play with them and allow time to decide, like, is this something I want to add to my life or not? Like, and I do a lot of experiments, or I had done for, a while, where it, like, could be meditating, or it could be journaling, or it could be, no alcohol or no sugar, whatever it is, you can play with it, but don't have too many at once, and then just see. And then even like your art, like I look at your art as an experiment, maybe. And so many times we want to have, I don't know, the full A to Z pathway laid out.
Mm,
And I found that, when I work with entrepreneurs, the same thing. It's like, all right, well, we want to have everything laid out and try and figure it all out, instead of just being like, okay, well, let's just be like, I really believe in being prolific instead of perfect.
mm,
And this idea of like constantly creating, like, just even if it's like a little bit every single day, this is really, really, last couple of years has really stuck with me, and I love it. And I still continue this process. I think I showed you one of my journals when we were together in Durango, and I still have this process of every single day is a new page. I don't have one in front of me, but it looks kind of like that page I just showed from the journal, right? Like, it's an illustration and then something that comes through. It's either, after meditating, whatever comes through, or it could be an old page, or who knows what, but just having that one creative act per day. And that's where one of my favorite things was born, that really, really well. I had actually, there was one book I wrote a couple years ago, maybe 8 years ago, which was the first little crack into exploring the art. And it was a business book. It was called The Evolved Enterprise. So it's all about how you create more impact in your business. It was, written for other entrepreneurs. It was kind of my part of my journey. And I remember I was on deadline, and on the last day of the deadline, I'm like, okay. And I really put my full heart and soul into this book, but I'm like, there's something missing. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I think I want to include my doodles. And like, I just got this instantaneous energy surge. And that's when you're onto something, when that energy just flows in and you're like, yeah, okay, that's it. And that inspiration comes in. And so I just stayed up till like 5 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning and just drew a bunch of things. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's it. And that was really, really fun. So that was my first like little inching in of kind of publicly showing some art. And it was like, oh, that was really fun. That was amazing.
mm. Cool. Oh, that's awesome to hear that story. And I mean, it's definitely something that stood out to me with the Cosmic Journal. That book was just like the handwritten, the heart, behind the doodles and the drawings. It felt very real, very like authentic. And so it makes sense that that also came from that sort of inspiration, from reconnecting with that maybe quiet voice that then surged through you.
Yeah. Well, the Cosmic Journal is that example of like that daily practice. And originally, so I saw this art challenge. I think a couple people put it on, and I don't remember who to give credit to, but it's called the 100-Day Art Challenge, whereas every
Mm,
single day for 100 days, you're creating a piece of art.
mm,
And I'm like, oh, that feels like a lot. I travel around, like, whatever, but I'm like, all right, well, who knows? There'll be some amazing byproduct that comes from it. And so my journal, I kind of like justified if I was going to do it or not do it. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it. And so I've never done a challenge or, experiment for that long, but I made it 108 days, and I had a little moleskin journal, and I made 108 check boxes. And because 108 in the wisdom traditions is more potent. And I'm like, okay. And so every single day, no matter what, it could be 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was, I would just draw something. And I had no rhyme or reason. I wasn't intending to publish it. It was just for me. And I think that's a big thing. It's like creating the art just for yourself was big. And it also reduced any kind of pressure. And so after about day 50, 60. I was like, wow, this is like an oracle. I would pop it open and be like, all right, what do I need to know? And then I'd slowly start showing it to a few people. And then when it was done, I would carry it around with me and be like, here, check this out. Open, take a breath and open up a page. And I had like, multiple people being like, wow, this is incredible. And one guy, one of my friends is like, all right, I'm going to, this, I see how you light up about this. I'm going to pay to publish this. And so this is where this version came from, this purple version of 888 of them. And he paid like $11,000 to publish it, and it just made it real. And it was just like the most interesting, like it just gave it real direction. And then I scanned every single page, and they're like little 2 inch by 2 inch squares. And I put them on my kitchen island to try and figure out what was the rhyme or reason to it, and create like a real arc to it. And then I created left-hand pages for people to use so they could use it as a journal as well. And it was like just the most inflow magical project that came out of it. And then I got a meeting with Hay House. Actually, Jeff Walker was instrumental in that. He helped set up a meeting with Reed from Hay House, and they're like one of the biggest publishers in the personal growth, spiritual development arena. And Reed is like, I've never seen anything like that. And so that's where the actual Cosmic Journal came from Hay House, and then a set of like oracle cards as well that were part of the contract. So it's like continued. It's just magical journey of like literally doing the art for yourself, but having that the constraint of every single day was a piece of art that I was doing.
So cool. One through line that I feel like is coming back throughout this conversation is around creativity for the sake of creativity and being connected without being attached to the outcome.
Totally.
And even the story you just shared, you didn't necessarily come out of the gate and say like, I want to get this published, I want to do X, Y, Z, but it came together in a beautiful way to turn into a published book. And I'm curious what your advice would be for, because I think about this a lot too, as someone who's an entrepreneur with goals and understand like the importance of KPIs and metrics and like setting targets, but also very much so, especially recently, had sort of a breakthrough where I had a similar kind of experience to what you described, where I was like, man, I'm like working every day of the week, like from the beginning of the day to the end. I'm not prioritizing my health. My relationship with my family was starting to suffer, and luckily I had I actually attended an ayahuasca ceremony, and this was like a ceremony for me that really kind of broke through a bunch of that stuff and made me realize I was living out of alignment with my core values and who I wanted to be. And it was a really powerful and needed experience. But I also, live in a world with goals and with, we have ambitions and targets and KPIs. And so this is something I come back to a lot. And myself personally, I would love to hear your answer for, is there a balance to like, how do you integrate goal setting and visualization? And like my family, we just created a vision board this last weekend. It was a really amazing, sweet experience with the whole family where everyone created their vision boards. And that's very much so like enjoyable in the moment, but also like, connected to kind of like a future state that we're dreaming up. And so would love to hear your perspective on like, how do you set goals and intentionally design things in the future while also respecting the present moment, not being like overly attached to those things in a way that constricts it?
Yeah, it's a great. I mean, I think it's a constant sort of inquiry of what is it. And as I don't know, matured or whatever you want to say, I think my goal setting has changed. Like originally, I learned goal setting in a very traditional kind of like, all right, I want this thing by this date or whatever it is, a very specific thing. And then I learned about, all right, I could allow the universe to have some more say in it and make it like, so I want this by this date or sooner, or this, or, or more, or this, or, whatever. So it created a little more, just flexibility of what it could be. And then recently it's really been more about like, just what is my intention? And that intention becomes that North Star and that guiding force. And like, how do I want to feel? And it's like, I remember finding a journal entry. I wrote it like maybe when I was 38 years old, and I was talking about my 40th birthday. And it was like, okay, by my 40th birthday, I want to have, this amount of money in the bank. I want to, I think it was like, I want to hang out with one of the local sports team owners, one of the hockey team, sports team owners. And I wanted to do, I forgot, there's like something, I wanted a Fisker Karma, which is like a car that I thought was really hot. at the time, and then so I turned 40, and I showed the entry to my wife. I'm like, am I, reading it to her, and she's like, oh, well, are you upset that this didn't happen? Like pretty much nothing on that page really happened, and I'm like, I thought about it. I'm like, no, not really, because the money represented freedom to do what I wanted with people I want and projects that I want. The hanging out with, this kind of celebrity owner of a sports team really just represented doing cool things with amazing people. And I couldn't even predict it, but I got invited by Richard Branson to go to a safari that was like right after my birthday. And on my birthday, I was actually at the Virgin Galactic factory seeing the rollout of the spaceship for my 40th. And then the Fisker Karma ended up being a bit of a lemon. So I'm like, it just, it works out even better. So now I have this that came out of my journal on my desk, and it kind of just guides me, which is trust the
Mm,
universe has even more in store for you than you can imagine.
mm,
And so sure, we can have these goals, we can have these things, but I think allowing the bigger unfolding of the magic has been something that I've really grown to appreciate, and see how that tunes in. And of course, you can't get so far into like, all right, well, it's just going to show up, and sometimes it does, but I don't know. I think so many times we try and control our way into what we want, and realizing that it's not probably going to show up the same way that you believe, or maybe there's a certain amount of willpower that we really can, but this next I don't know, this next evolution really relies much more on us tapping into our feelings and that inner guidance system, and just allowing these remarkable synchronicities to show up, these people in our lives, these just these things that we couldn't have predicted.
mm, mm. That's a great answer. Yeah, I did appreciate that. And the quote that came up as you're sharing that was what people plan and God laughs.
Yeah, something like
And
that. Yeah.
yeah, and so that's personally very helpful for me as I'm sort of learning how to balance between setting goals and showing up, and really appreciating the way that things are, and having trust in the process.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, to take things in a slightly different route, but something I think is really important right now, and also connected to the conversation that we've been having. You mentioned a couple times in the conversation about just the period of time that we're in right now as humanity. This is a really special time in history that people like Ray Kurzweil refer to as a singularity that's like approaching. We have AI, super intelligent, machines, and AI that's becoming more and more prevalent, and we're able to dream things faster and easier and create them faster and easier than ever. But also, in some ways, it feels like we're still very disconnected from our essence, or like who we are. And so we'd love to hear your perspective on kind of the where things are at right now for humanity as it relates to super intelligence from like a digital standpoint, and how can we embrace these technologies that are emerging while also staying true to who we are and connected with that deeper purpose.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time. So I look at, I've studied a lot of, I don't know, different cultures and prophecies, or all sorts of things. And there's this big giant cycle. There's always cycles within cycles, but there's this 26,000 year cycle that, scientists, it just roughly, it's 25,920 years, or whatever, like it's approximate. And science is like, oh, this is precession. This is, the wobble of the earth. But a lot of other cultures look at it as these big eras, or different suns, or different yugas. And so most people are familiar with like the golden age, and then there's the golden age, silver age, bronze, and iron. But most people think of history like this, like a very linear thing. But history and time is really much more cyclical, or at least a lot of other cultures really looked at it that way, especially the Mayans and other cultures. So I was really fortunate to celebrate during 2012. I was at in a Mayan village, came out of a temazcal, which is like a Mayan sweat lodge, literally at midnight on that winter solstice. And so when I think about this moment, I think it can be really easy, kind of like, again, like our head, heart, higher purpose. It can be too easy to be like, all right, well, here's the logical thing, and let's only let technology kind of guide us. But I think there's so much technology within our human body that we don't even know or haven't fully even like activated. And so, you mentioned the ayahuasca ceremony. I think there's so much amazing indigenous wisdom, and that's why I love having incredible elders and wisdom keepers that I turn to and look to. And one of them, she tells me during this time or times of transitions, her ancestors always say, sing your songs, dance your dances, pray your prayers, and be in ceremony or something like that. And it's just really about, that. And music is such a huge part of that. Growing up as a kid, I wasn't really, kind of into music, but not really. And then as I've found, like in ceremony or different ways where music has had a much bigger, deeper meaning, I'm like, oh, there's so much here that it can touch in a different way that nothing else can. And so, if you're putting out music, you are part of this unique time for this shift, this evolutionary shift happening, or your art or whatever it is. Like, I really do think that the art that I'm putting out is helping hopefully catalyze some of it. This idea of lighting suns who can light other suns, like that's my full mission. And not to get so enamored, I think, with just the technology, where it's like, okay, let's let the technology do everything or figure it out, and it's too easy to get sucked into that and not really tap into what is ours to do as humans. And so that, to me, that's the creativity, it's the community, it's the connection, it's ceremony. It's really all the things that make us human, and double down on that part. So yes to technology, but also like let's utilize, let's really honor and elevate the humanness of what we have. And to me, the artistry is a big part of that.
Mm, awesome. 100%. So what I'm hearing you say is that the technology is both amazing and exciting, but also it's easy for kind of like the head to get excited about that and lose touch with our hearts and
Yeah.
our greater purpose. And staying grounded during that through this time is especially important. Um, love to hear you talk a little bit about, and I mean, this hopefully not opening too much of a can of worms right now, like right as we're approaching the end of our conversation, but you seem like someone that probably has some really good insights as it relates to um, this next evolution and that humanity is going through right now, as it relates, I mean, technology is involved, but maybe more of like a renaissance of like our souls and kind of like connections with ourselves. The spiritual movement, I've heard this referred to as sort of like an awakening or an enlightenment period where we're like waking up from our egos. um, would love to hear you share a little bit about your experience as it relates to this spiritual movement, a kind of revolution that's happening right now. And what is that, what's the role of art and musicians, specifically as it relates to, as you would describe it, lighting up, lighting up 1,000 suns in the light, being able to radiate or kind of express that higher self or the higher truth. Yeah, just would love to just tap into that a
Sure.
bit.
Yeah, well, yeah, actually, thanks for bringing me back to that, because I didn't quite finish. So that cyclical cycle is like, so if we have golden age, silver age, bronze, iron, we're actually in that next ascending age up, and you can feel it a lot. I mean, I can, in so many conversations that I have, with the groups that I connect to, it's entrepreneurs mostly, and let's say you're talking about meditation, like that wouldn't be a conversation 15 years ago, 10 years ago even, or consciousness or ceremony or whatever. But now it's a much bigger thing. And so there's these awakenings that are happening in different things, different areas, different categories. So I look at, these 1,000 suns, lighting 1,000 suns. That's how, it's a metaphor, but it's not. It's like, so you have to yourself be lit up fully as a sun. And then as you become lit fully as a sun, then you're going to be planting seeds. And the seeds are your art, your music, your education, your training, even a kind word to an Uber driver or whatever it is. But these are like little seeds that are planted that come out of you being fully lit as a sun, and then lighting other suns. So it's like gathering other communities together, like a community that you want to form, or it could be transformative work that you're doing, or whatever it is, to empower and multiply other leaders and visionaries and creators. And then out comes blooms, and the blooms are joint projects, opportunities, ways of playing together. So it's kind of a new way of being, and so that is a fractal, like these seeds and suns and blooms. And so that's what I see happening. And the role of artists and creatives and musicians is huge in this, because I mean, this has been, you look at the history of music, like how many messages are embedded into music that are designed for, to awaken people or to get people thinking in a different way or whatever it is. And I just get, amazed. I went to see Taylor Swift. My wife got sick, so I took my daughter to Taylor Swift, and I got, the purple sparkly jacket on, and my daughter's like, "Oh, you're whatever era." I'm like, "Yes, I'm whatever that era is." But I've been listening to the music because they play it all the time, and I'm just like watching, I don't know, 70,000 people. And like music there's nothing else that has that, I think, power to like bring people together and then train them into that same spot. And so, I've seen it with festivals too. But if there's a higher consciousness to what we're delivering, then it gets really exciting too, because it's not just, designed to be commercially viable, but designed to be, let's activate someone into their fullness. And then what does that look like? And, again, this sun's lighting suns. So it's really, really fascinating to me. And I think art, that's why I love the art that I've been putting out, because it has an ability to like be Trojan horses for higher consciousness, for connection, for creativity, whatever you want it to be. It just has a way of like kind of like sneaking in underneath the radar in some way. So I think there's something really big there. And then if we have time, Mike, I want to also share about the identity, because we had talked about this, I think, before we got started. The identity of being an artist, of how important that is.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say, really resonate with what you just shared, and even just like the premise of a sun lighting 1,000 other suns.
Yeah. Well, you're
Um,
doing it. I mean, this is what you're doing, right? I
we're
mean,
we're doing it together, aren't we? Yeah, this
yeah, I mean,
conversation is
exactly.
an
It's not
example.
it's not my, like, it's come to me multiple times, and it's not just my thing. It's like one of my buddies, we're in the Amazon jungle together. He's like, "Oh, bro, I get it." He's like, "I want to light suns." I thought that was a Yanik thing. I'm like, "No, it's, whatever, different words or whatever it is, but it's that energy of lighting somebody up fully as their fullest
Mm,
expression, but it has to come from you first. Like, you have to be fully lit up. And it's an evolution too. It's not just a one and done process, but
mm.
it's an evolutionary process.
There's something really powerful just about, I mean, the concept of, the light and the dark, it just comes up in pretty much every, world religion. And I know for me, like I've been getting back into my morning ritual and going for a run in the morning, there's been a few times, this is a little bit of a synchronicity, but specifically, like it's come up a few times where I'm running and I feel inspired to like imagine that my body's just completely filled with light, and like I'm just like radiating like light, and it
Yeah,
makes a noticeable impact, like on how I'm showing up, I'm feeling, how I'm expressing, and I'm like passing people, I'm like much more friendly, and like, like
yeah.
you want to say like hi, and yeah, there's something to that concept of light and lighting up
But it comes
each
from
other.
you, but it's you yourself first, and then the overflow is the radiance, and radiating in all multi dimensions and multiple ways. So
It's beautiful.
yeah.
Speaking of lighting things up, you were mentioning the identity work and diving a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I wanted to hit on that before we got off the podcast here, because at as I would identify myself originally as an entrepreneur, and then like I can realize where my different shifts were just through my immigration forms, when I'd be going
Mm-hmm.
somewhere and write down, had you right occupation, and at some
Mm-hmm.
point a couple years ago I changed it to artist. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, whatever. And I rate artist. So then
Mm-hmm.
there's been now like two or three times that the immigration officer's like, well, what kind of art do you do? And I'm like, and it like stops me for a second. And I'm like, no, yeah, I am an artist. And I'll show him like this. I'm like, all right, this is one of them. It's, one of my drawings. He's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay. But it's just like that identity. And so for a while, I haven't really felt like I'm a true artist, because I wasn't paid, even though I guess I published the books and was paid for the journal and different things. But I was talking to one of my friends, and he's like, so, what are you excited by? And instead of like talking about a business thing, I'm like, I'm really excited about my art and do more of it. And then I showed him a picture of this neon artwork that I had done in my house of one of my drawings and turned it into a neon piece. And he's like, oh, that's pretty cool. He's like, I want to be one of your first collectors for the office. And
Mm,
I'm like, okay. And he's like, all right, well, it's gonna be less than $10,000, right? I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be less than 10,000. And but
mm,
him buying it, just like it just like activated something of like, removing some of the shame or some of the, I don't know, like there was something about it that really made it real.
mm,
And so I think there was something really powerful there. And I had a little piece of art that I wrote about it, but I'll send it to you if you want to include it in here. But it was basically this idea of like, what shame story are you ready to burn? And
mm,
and so I think we have these shame stories that we can really get rid of. I don't know
mm,
if I don't have a good way of sharing it, but anyway, I'll send it to you. But I think there's something there about what is it, and this aspect, this validation. I'm a real artist, and that. So my shame story was that my art is just a side project. That was what I kept telling myself,
mm,
and then I was like, no, this is real. This is my next evolution, whatever it is, and so whatever story goes back to our words create our world, like that
mm,
page we picked up. So see what story you're telling yourself that is ready to be evolved or ready to be burned away.
mm. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, but let's definitely include a link to it, in the show notes. People can
Yeah,
dig into it. But yeah, it definitely seems like there's I love the way you just like you can let go of the shame story and let it burn. Like in that, like when it burns, it almost has this like energy or this fuel to it, or can actually like there is a
transmutation.
mm, like
Yeah,
alchemy. Yeah,
yeah,
it's like
exactly.
turning poison into medicine.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah, and
cool.
we have and it's just takes some exploration of what is that shame story or whatever that story is that's not necessarily true that we can burn away now.
Hmm. Awesome. Well, Yannick, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to be here and have this conversation. This has been a lot of fun and kind of explored certain areas that I don't have conversations like this often. So hopefully, folks who are watching this right now feel more inspired to kind of reconnect with their art and to share it in a way that they can fully enjoy the art for the art's sake without getting lost in what does it need to be or kind of the outcome that they're doing it
Mhm.
for. And Yannick, I know you've got some very cool things that you're working on right now related to like your art and sharing that. And I would love to hear what you'd recommend for folks who are listening to this right now who want to connect more, who are artists, and they want to see what you're up to. You got your cosmic journal and your maybe you could share what are you most excited about right now that if someone here is interested in connecting more, what you'd
Yeah,
recommend that they get
I
started
mean, the
with.
Cosmic Journal is at hayhouse.com or amazon.com, or the Cosmic Journey Oracle cards. And these have been really, really fun to create. Actually, I pulled one for us, which I felt was very appropriate, which is deliver your greatest gift to the world, which is
Wow.
definitely anyone listening to this, you have a great gift and the world's waiting for it.
Mm,
So also I've been doing a daily, I don't know, my friend can't is telling me that I can't call it a doodle anymore, but it is kind of a
mm,
doodle. It's a daily sun spark. So it's called thousandsunsparks.com. And I do a daily
mm.
illustration that goes out to people. And
Cool. Thousand Sun Sparks. That's
.com,
a
yeah,
way cooler way to to name it. The words, a guy, a wise person once told me, Yannick, the words that you use matter.
they do matter.
Um,
Yeah, words definitely create your world. And
mm,
that was the thing that I loved as a copywriter is words were so like one change of a word really made a huge difference too. It's just fascinating.
mm,
These words have
awesome.
energy. Yeah. And words like in our songs, right? The lyrics and all sorts of things. Like it's
Uh
powerful.
huh. The specific words, the things that they symbolize, like the words are kind of like they're connected to that root
Yeah.
of the intention behind the word. It's good stuff. Yannick, thank you again so much for being here. We'll put all the links in the show notes for easy
Cool.
access. And looking forward to hopefully being able to spread. Well, not hopefully
Yeah.
being one
You
of
are.
the lights that's continuing to spread. This message of reconnecting with your source and who you are, and sharing it with
Yeah.
more people.
You're already doing it. Thanks, Michael.
Woo! Yeah.